I cut mine.
Good morning. My name is Sean Powell. I'm the acting chairman of the Maryland Transportation Authority Board this morning. I hereby call the meeting of the MDTA Board to order at 9 a.m. For the record, members Ardinger and Carroll will be on the line calling in today, so we'll allow them a little bit of drag time when I call for votes, things to register their vote. So this morning we are having our meeting in person at MDTA headquarters, and in accordance with the live streaming law, this meeting is being live streamed on the MDTA board webpage. I would like to say welcome to the members and staff who are here with us today. As a reminder, I ask that anyone who is in the room with us this morning to refrain from speaking unless you are presenting or answering a question to avoid any background noise on the live stream. There are no members of the public, no elected officials, no media who have pre-registered to comment at this morning's meeting. For those of you who are watching this meeting via live stream, we have posted the materials for today's meeting on the MDTA board webpage so that you may follow along if you wish. Before we start the agenda, I would like to thank Natalie and the entire MDTA team for pulling the meeting together as they do every month. As we all know, Natalie keeps us on track and keeps the cats herded around and keeps things moving. So thank you, Natalie, and everyone else who makes her job a little bit easier when she asks for everything. So we appreciate it. With that, we're going to proceed to agenda item number 1. It's the approval of the open session meeting minutes of April 28th, 2022.
I'll move for approval.
Oh, second. Wow. Okay, we have a motion by Member Gangemi and a second by Member Cox. Any discussion? Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Oh, sorry, Member Enzer. We just approved the minutes for the open session, so now you're here for the closed session portion. Item number 2, closed session meeting minutes of April 20.
I'll move for approval.
Okay, Member Gangemi. And got a first and a second? Any discussion?
And who was the second? I'm sorry.
Member
Enzer. Sorry. Sorry about that. Member Enzer. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Motion the minutes are approved for both the open and closed session. Items number 3 and 4, we have a pinch hitter today. Jeff Davis will be pinch hitting for Donna DeCervo. So item number 3, there's a series of contracts to be approved, and we'll go through these one by one. The first one is J01B26000015, Open Text Content Server Maintenance. So, Jeff, you're up, sir. Mr. Davis.
Thank you, members. For the record, again, my name is Jeff Davis, Deputy Director of Procurement here at the MDTA, and I am stepping in for Donna to present 3 contracts for award. The first one, as you already mentioned, is the Open Text Content Server Maintenance and Support contract. This is a small business reserve contract for the OpenText Content Server system. OpenText Content Server is used to maintain, store, and allow quick access to various documents, as well as allows fluent workflow management. The MDTA leverages the OpenText Content Server for management of documents to include the procurement log, card log, the financial file cabinet, human resources scanning, and in the future will be used for police and civil rights and fair practices file storage. The continued software maintenance and support will allow the MDTA to maintain our current licenses and continued use of the OpenText software, as well as support to technical support, as well as access to technical support as needed. Any questions?
Any questions on the OpenText Content Server Maintenance contract?
Move for approval.
All right, we have a motion
I'll second.
and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, we have unanimous on that one. All right, the next one is the rubric software maintenance contract, J01B34000618.
Once again, I'm here to present award, just to clarify on that number. Maybe you have a typo in your document, but the contract number is J01B34000068.
I read it. I added the one.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, great. I wanted to make sure your documents were correct.
Yeah, no, they are correct. That
Okay.
was, I added a number.
Okay, fantastic. So once again, I'm seeking to get approval to execute this contract for the rubric software maintenance. This backup software is critical to the MDTA. In addition to performing reliable backups of all MDTA enterprise systems, Rubric also takes backups of multiple file shares hosted on MDTA's NetApp storage system. By taking multiple backups of MDTA files throughout the day, MDTA is better protected in the event of that the organization encounters a ransomware attack. With this new Rubric contract, all data protection services that we currently have at the MDTA will continue.
Okay, great. Any questions for Jeff on this one? If not, I'll entertain. Oh, looks like you have a question. You don't? That operator there. Maybe we should have worn a tie. Okay, you got it? Okay, good. Any questions? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the Rubric software maintenance contract J01B34000068.
So moved.
I have a motion? Second. And a second. Any further discussion or any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next up, there appear to be two contracts in this one. Is that correct, Jeff?
Correct. This is
Okay.
a multi-award contract.
Gotcha, multi-award contract. So MT 31450000 and MT 31550000. HVAC maintenance and repairs for the MDTA facilities.
Thank you. So as mentioned, this is a multi-award contract because it is a multi-region contract. It is broken up into a northern and central regions and a southern region. And we are looking today to seek approval to award both of those contracts. These contracts are for the provision of HVAC repair and maintenance. The requested repair and maintenance services include boilers, dampers, air handling units, chillers, cooling towers, air conditioning, control compressors, electrical, electronic, and pneumatic controls, coils, pumps, valves, gauges, nozzles, motors, exhaust fans, and any other item directly related to the heating and air conditioning systems at various MDTA facilities.
Any questions on these two multi?
I just have a question. I think it's for the Region 1, we had 4 bidders that were in the 3 to 4 million range, and then 3 in the 8 to 9, almost $10 million range. So are we clear? Is the winning bidder clear with the scope of the project and versus the one that was very high?
Yes, we feel very confident in Denver Elec as the winning bidder for this region. They have a history of working at our facilities, so they are experienced in the needs of our agency. I don't have any information as to why the other bids were excessively higher, but if you can see, the first 3 or 4 bids are within range of each other, which we generally find to be acceptable when reviewing the bids.
And how did these compare to the engineer's estimate?
Well, this being a maintenance contract, it didn't have the typical engineer's estimate. It generally is a fund certification that is produced compared on previous years' usage, and the fund certificate was sufficient enough to cover these services. I don't have the dollar amount, but I can look it up for you. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just comment too that it's not unusual to see some outlier numbers at the high end. Frankly, if a bidder starts in a procurement and then realizes, hey, I put a bunch of time in this, but I'm not actually that interested, they might just throw a high number at it, like, if I win this, then for this price, then I'll do it, but I don't really want it. And we see that sometimes, and even hear that from bidders. So.
Great. Okay, Kim, just one point of clarification. Is it okay to approve both of these because they're, okay, as one as opposed to, okay, great, instead of separating them out. All right, so with any other questions or discussions, we'll entertain a motion to approve MT 31450000 and MT 31550000.
So moved.
Have a motion?
Second.
And second. We'll give it to Member Gaines. He's on my left. We'll get you a motion later. Any further discussion?
I just have a comment.
Okay, great.
It's good to see the amount of participation here with these bids.
Yeah.
I think that always works to our, it's good. I'll just say that.
No,
It's
absolutely.
good to do.
No, I agree. I mean,
Well, I have a question. Well, I mean, why can't we do engineer's estimates? Because we do them on all these other maintenance contracts or open-ended. They bid on certain items, right?
So
It's hourly rates, I guess, right?
a lot of it is based on the different types of services that we need at each facility and hourly
We had
rates.
no idea what it was going to cost.
We get in our maintenance contracts from the operations team will generally provide us a fund certification that isn't broken down by individual line items as compared to what we might get from a consultant putting together a construction IFB engineer's estimate. I don't know if Will has any comments on that or if Jim is around on the difference between how those units price their contracts.
I mean, if they come in with $10 million, we would have said, good, that's good.
No, we definitely look hard at the funds available for that work, and if the price had come in way over price, we would have met with ops and decided if we needed to reduce scope and rebid.
Right.
Member Gaines, I think the best I can say at this point without the contract manager here is we'll get you a better answer on that. I'll follow up with the team and try to confirm for maintenance contracts what is the difference that sort of results in why they didn't do that here. So I understand the question. It's a good question. We'll get you some more details on that.
okay, right. Any other questions, concerns, comments? All right, so we've had a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? You get 2 votes there. All right. Motion's the vote is unanimous. Thank you, Jeff. You're still here.
Stuck.
Procurement report on all open contracts, item number 4.
Thank you. Thank you for approving my 3 contracts. I really appreciate that. This is a verbal that we give, I believe, every 3 months, and I'm prepared to give you an update from the last one we did in February. So as of today, the agency has 230 open contracts. 14 of them are MOUs. 78 of them are A&E contracts. 62 are construction contracts. 23 are maintenance contracts, 22 service contracts, and 31 IT contracts. The total contract amount, I'm going to make sure I count my zeros here, $3,161,682,196.28. Paid to date of that sum is $1,670,472,626.22. We are still obligated. Remaining POs provided to us is $1,101,149,873.89, and the remaining open balance, which would be items that we've not received tasks or invoices, purchase orders for, purchase orders for, would be $390,059,686.17.
Wow. That's a mouthful.
Choking on those.
It's
But that's over a several-year period.
Member Gaines
Oh,
almost
yes.
passed
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
this.
You might want to,
This lists, this is so contracts, any contract that expires after today. So some of them are multi-year contracts.
Sure.
Some of them may be larger contracts that, payments are spread out over, and some of them you may have had early implementation costs, but the contract life cycle still has several years of work to complete.
Great. Any questions for Jeff or anyone? So Jeff, thanks for pinch hitting today. You probably didn't wake up this morning expecting to come in here, but maybe.
It was a toss up, and I figured Donna had a prior commitment, and I was not going to make her miss it. So.
Great job. No, we appreciate
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate you
Okay.
jumping in.
Thank you, everyone.
And I'll see you on the next BPW call. All right. Next up, an update. In fact, we do have one more approval item here in a minute. Deb Sharpless is going to update us on the TFP revenue refunding bonds for the refinancing series 2012 toll revenue bonds. So, good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. For the record, I'm Deb Sharpless, MDTA's Chief Financial Officer. I'm here today to report back in accordance with Resolution 22-02. This was a resolution for the refinancing of Series 2012 bonds. Last month, we were here with good news because we talked about the TIFIA loan closing. So now, this time we're back for this refunding. Part of this resolution, you delegate authority to the executive director and staff to close on these bond deals. And a condition of those is you give us parameters in which we need to act within, and then we need to come back to you and report the results. So this is reporting the results. So for this refinancing, we looked at both a bank loan as well as going out in the municipal market. For this particular case, we determined that a bank loan represented the lowest cost, and it also allowed us to close faster, which was important because of the rising interest rate environment that we've been in. We received 11 bids from banks, and the winning bid was Raymond James. At the end of April, prevailing municipal financing rates were approximately 25 basis points higher than the bank loan, and that equated to an additional $400,000 in additional savings over the time period of 2023 through 2029. In total, the refinancing generated $2.2 million in savings. The bonds are callable July 1st, 2022. So in the interim time period, we've established a defeasance escrow account that's funded with U.S. Treasury securities. So on page 2, we hit upon some key points. First is, what was the par amount? It was $39.198 million. The purpose was an economic refinancing. Savings was $2.2 million. The true interest cost is 219 basis points. The final maturity is July 1st, 2029. That is when the original bond's final maturity. There's no extension. It's the exact same time period. And the debt service reserve contingently required. And so in the table, you can see is first column is the provision, second column was the limitations. That was the requirements that was placed in the resolution. And then the third column is what was the actual results. And then the fourth column is did we comply? So you can see we were within the amount authorized. Now the reason it's so high is this resolution was for both the TIFIA loan and this refinancing. So when you consider $200 million for the TIFIA loan plus this $39 million, we're within the 250. We needed to have savings greater than $1 million. At 2.2, we exceeded. The reason for the useful life, that was the TIFIA piece, so that's not applicable. And so the maturities align, and we needed to close by December 31st, 2022. The closing was on May 5th, 2022. And then we report back at the first board meeting after the sale, which is this board meeting.
Okay.
So
Good.
that
Great.
closes out this item. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Deb. Do we have any questions? Member Arndinger, any questions? Forgot to ask you that last time.
Not on my end. Thank you.
Great. Okay, great. Thanks, Deb. Now we have an approval item. Alan Garman will be joining us. The item 6, quarterly review of investment strategy and performance. Approval to continue with the current investment strategy. Welcome.
Great, thank you. This is our normal quarterly report on investment strategy and performance. We're seeking approval for the continuation of the current investment strategies and the benchmarks for all of the accounts. This item was discussed in greater detail with the Finance Committee recently, and they recommended that, or the members that were present at the time recommended that we continue with the current strategies and benchmarks. The high-level bullets are that for the trailing 12 months, our investments conform to our investment policy limitations and legal trust agreement limitations. The structuring of the portfolios adhered to the board-approved strategy, and we're recommending a continuation of that strategy despite the market volatility with rising interest rates. Another important point is that our multi-year returns of around 1% align with our financial forecast. So we don't have any idea of what the returns are going to be month to month or year to year, but based on prevailing yields when we buy the bonds, we have a good understanding of what multi-year returns will end up being.
I just want to add one thing. Part of the really good conversation that we had during Finance Committee was where we looked at when you have a longer duration, which we do for the M&O compared to the general account, that longer duration, we are able to show over time how you have greater earnings. But the trade-off to those higher earnings is more volatility. And so that's what we're in now, and being able to visually see it in the discussion that we had at Finance Committee, that this is the trade-off. And when you think about the unencumbered cash in which we invest on a total return basis, we have a long-term look. That's not money that we need right now. That's money that, we've never touched in the past, nor do we ever plan on touching. So we can take that longer-term look at things. Now, if you're thinking, well, then why isn't everything that long, like the M&O as well and the general? And that's because the $350 million, we must still always comply with that. And so just as the really good times when interest rates are falling, we have really, really good returns. They're the great days. But when interest rates are rising like this, you have to be able to cover these volatile time periods as well. And so that's why at this point in time, the board had only approved the M&O with the longer than the general account duration. So I think it was just, I thought, one of our better, discussions. We always have good discussions over investments, but very focused on that point because these are difficult markets right now. The outcome of the discussion was that we need to stay the course.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit more history and perspective is that back in 2015, we reviewed this performance and return volatility trade-off more extensively. And so, the board recognized those historic returns, the volatility, and accepted that volatility in exchange for, significantly higher returns over multi-year periods. The M&O reserve, we had a 1 to 5 year benchmark, and we lengthened that back with the board's approval in 2020. We initially sought approval, and then the pandemic hit, and rates fell to all-time lows, and so we held off on that transition for that portfolio for several months and really didn't start until the end of 20, and then we took several months doing it. So you'll see how that impacted performance on the following pages. Our strategies, I think, back to Deb's point, is that the portfolio is about $800 million, and $450 million of that is considered match funded, meaning that it's relatively short term. We have our capital money is very short. They tend to have investment maturities of less than 1 year, where you have operating funds that are highly liquid, typically overnight investments, and then our bond service accounts. We pay debt service semi-annually. We set aside those monies in advance each month, so those monies are never invested longer than 1 year. So we experience some price volatility in those portfolios, but it's very small. Everything's held to maturity, so they always have a positive return inside of a 12-month period. The rest of the money is the $350 million in our unrestricted position. That's our long-term reserve. So that's money that we don't need. We maintain that as part of our debt policy. to try to maintain AA credit ratings and access to the capital markets. So that's our sort of our reserve for contingencies that we know is multi-year and long-term. So for those two reserve accounts, we have the general account that's managed against a 1 to 5 year benchmark. So our maturities are structured between 1 and 5 years. And then the M&O reserve is about 14% of that $350 million. And so that has a longer benchmark that's structured with maturities out to 15 years and an average maturity of about 7.5 years. So for the performance over the trailing 12 months, did you? Okay. We, for the general account, the return is negative 3.5, and that was very much in line with the index, which was negative 3.7. That's shown in that table there. That's all associated with mark-to-market price declines. So, I mean, just for perspective, back in August, which is just a few months ago, the yield on the portfolio was less than 0.5%, and it's risen to over 2%. So much of the yield curve has risen by more than 2 percentage points from extremely low levels. So there's a lot of mark-to-market declines in prices. And, you know, what we talked about at the beginning was that we're focused on multi-year returns. There's a lot of volatility month to month and year to year. If you look at the 5-year average annual return for the portfolio, it's very much in line with the index as well. It's around 1.4%. And interestingly, if you look back 5 years ago in 2017, prevailing yields were around 1.6% for the portfolio. So the securities that are purchased, you have a fairly good idea of what that forward-looking return is going to be. It's essentially the yields that you're buying at in the portfolio. And that's despite a negative return last year, calendar year, and then 2 years of mark-to-market returns at around 4.5%. So even though interest rates were sub 1%, the portfolio was having these big gyrations of mark-to-market. But you can see how that smooths out over a multi-year period, and you end up with about a 1.4% return. And I guess lastly, we move on to, I guess a couple other points is that, as Deb alluded to, we believe that multi-year return and these negative returns and the volatility is manageable. For the M&O reserve, we lengthen the duration of that portfolio, so the trailing, 1-year return is negative 6%, and it's quite a bit different than the two indices, both our former index and the new index, which are down over 3%. And the difference there is that because of the transition, we missed out on the good returns for the longer index a few months ago, and then once interest rates started to rise, we were in the midst of extending, and so we suffered in the longer structure as rates rose, and we missed out when rates were more stable or falling. So what we've experienced more recently is that the portfolio is now fully in line with the new benchmark, and so returns for single months are very much in line with that new index, but we don't have a good comparable for the trailing 12-month period. So I guess in conclusion, as unsettling as the negative returns are, I think the board has recognized in the past and our investment committee that multi-year returns sort of average out to be positive. They represent what prevailing yields are, and there's a significant return potential when you're investing that much money over multiple years to pick up a lot more yield by sort of staying the course, remaining consistent to your benchmark, and accepting that volatility in exchange for higher average annual returns. So, our recommendation is to approve the current investment strategies for the upcoming quarter.
Yeah. And let me, we included this month the materials from the Finance Committee in your board materials. Normally you have a more summarized version, and I just want to kind of conclude on 3 slides that I'm draw your attention to, and that's slide 10, 11, and 12. So slide 10 says the strategies that we have, and that's specifically what we're asking you to approve that we continue with. Slide 11 shows the green is the longer maturities, the blue is the shorter. And if we went even shorter, you'd have another line underneath of it. And so you can see, you know, over back 2002, so we have history here for us, consistently you have those higher returns with the longer durations. The graph underneath of it is the volatility. So you can see with the green how much more volatility there is compared to the blue. And that's what we're seeing. But when you stay in it for the long run, you have those higher returns. And then on slide 12, what that's showing is the total, well, a couple things. Your income return, your price return with mark to market, the yield, and the total return. And you can see the inverse relationship that exists. When prices drop, interest rates go down, we have this yield goes up. And when interest rates rise, we go back down. And you can see the cycle. And so, you know, in one respect, when, yes, we're in compliance with the benchmark, but I think more, you know, that don't get me wrong, that's very important. That means that we're listening to the board. But more importantly, is the board answering the question, are we in the right benchmark? And this is where we're trying to demonstrate that we are in the right benchmark, because we're taking a long-term look. We are going out longer to the extent we can manage the volatility. And yes, we're in this rising interest rate environment and our price returns are negative, but that's a cycle. And you can see the cycle on slide 12. And a minute ago, Alan mentioned the higher returns, right? We just came out of 19 and 20, and we were in the exact same benchmarks, right? And you can see how high our returns are during those years, and now we're down lower, and at the end of the day, they average. And so we're in the downside of that we'll average back out to the prevailing rates from when we initially purchased. So that's I think we understand the, you know, the concerns when you see negative returns, but I think it's important that the board is comfortable that we are in the right benchmarks.
Okay.
So if there's any questions, Alan, happy to answer them. Otherwise, we request the approval.
We have a question down here.
Yeah, I've got a question. I mean, I'm trying to get my arms around the negative returns, and I think I got it, that really the losses are mark-to-market losses.
That's right.
They're not cash losses. We're not sending money, you know, kicking out money to some entity, and that when we're going to hold the issues till they mature, and then we'll pay them off. And I think yes, that those issues are worth less money for that period of time, but they'll come back to where we paid for them. So I guess you could say the same thing about the gains were a little bit illusory, I guess.
I would agree, yeah. I mean, I think if you think about buying a security a year ago at 1%, and, you know, it's a 5-year security, and now that same security is yielding, you know, over, you know, 2.5%, 3%.
Yeah.
You know, basically your return to maturity is now 3%, which is going to make up for that sort of market value loss, but it's still worth par at maturity. So yeah, you're suffering from sort of an illusionary mark-to-market decline, but now your bond's been repriced effectively. Its yield to maturity now is higher, and so you'll be recovering that market price decline. And the market price declines because it's essentially adjusting the price of that security to prevailing market rates. So now the yield has to equal what the prevailing rates are to maturity. So that's what we're trying to manage through, that volatility, accept it for, you know, higher average annual returns.
And to member gains, when we're talking about the M&O versus the general account, so at a year end, when we're measuring ourselves against our $350 million, it is adjusted for mark to market, right? Like you said, the money's not, you can literally give it away, but the bank account balance is lower because we have to go to market. And so, and that is the reason that we're, have not come back and recommended that we extend the general account out any further, grab those higher yields that history shows, because we have to always comply with the 350. And when you're in a market like this, and here we are coming up on year end, we, mark to market can't impact us so greatly that it could jeopardize the 350. And so that's why we went out a little further with the M&O, because that's 14% of the 350.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve the quarterly review investment strategy and performance, which to continue with the current investment strategy.
So moved.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second by, oh, gotcha.
Second.
By second, by member Von Paris. See, I told you we'd get you. Any further discussion?
Just a comment.
Yes, sir.
Just recognizing everyone for the great effort behind these numbers, putting everything together, and their hard work on this, specifically on this agenda item, and the investments. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. And thank the whole team. Oh,
Yeah.
I guess we were to take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Nope. Yep, we got them. Okay, the vote is unanimous. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Next up, Jeffrey Brown is going to update us on the third quarter operating budget comparison, actual versus projected FY 2022. Welcome. Item number 7.
Finally set. Well, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
For the record, my name is Jeffrey Brown, Budget Director of the MDTA, and I'm here for the quarterly review of the budget performance ending third quarter as of March. As of March 31st, we had spent 52% of the budget compared to a target of 73%. There's really three key takeaways on that performance. The first is personnel vacancies, as has been mentioned before, is driving a lot of the underspend. Some seasonality to certain expenses and timing of invoices, and there is still some lingering code effects, and we will see that especially in some Easy Pass service center costs, which drive the performance. Starting into some of the detail, for Object 1, we are below budget at its 65% spend. As just mentioned, ongoing vacancies is what's driving that performance. Communications, Object 3 is at 25%, and really that's driven by Object 305, which is state paid telecommunications, and that represents the invoice for the state radio system, which has not been paid as of yet. It's $1.7 million, and that really drives most of the underspend. All the other sub-objects are at about a 65% spend. Travel is at a 24% spend, and again, this is one of those ongoing COVID-19 effects. There's a lot more teleworking, still more telelearning. There's still some impact on in-person conference attendance, things of that nature. So that's been driving the underspend in travel. Object 6, fuel and utilities. The big drive, it's at 56% spend, and the real driver is Object 620, which is electricity, which is at a 48% spend. I think as mentioned previously, we've had some LED replacements. There's been toll booth removals and some timing of invoices, but those two, the LED and the toll booth removals, drive reduced electricity needs, and that's driving the underspend in that object. Object 7 is at which is motor vehicle operations and maintenance, is at 57% spend. Again, we're looking at supply chain delays is driving a lot of this performance. There's a lot of orders have been ordered, but there's been delays due to supply chain issues, which has driven a lot of that underspend. And we do expect probably to have to roll over some of these funds to the next year. Contractual services, Object 8 is at a 30% spend. Looking at the three initial ones: advertising, energy equipment repairs and engineering equipment repairs and maintenance, building repairs and maintenance, 812. All those are underspent. Again, most of the drivers in those are the timing and the seasonality of these types of accounts. We do have some larger expenses, especially in the maintenance accounts later in the year. But in addition, we do anticipate there might be some savings in advertising. Moving on to 813, janitorial services. It's at a 52% spend, and that's really been driven by construction shutting down some of the buildings for a period of time. So there was just no access to the buildings, which drove the underspend in that object. Education and training, similar as mentioned before, it's a 28% spend, but ongoing COVID-19 protocols in terms of in-person attendance and some seasonality of the expenses is driving that underspend, but we do anticipate potentially having some savings in that object. Management studies, 821, is at a 42% spend. Again, there was some impact mentioned before COVID, but from this one, we're seeing some timing of invoices, but there are reduced requests for studies in this area, so there's potential in savings for that object going forward. Security services, 823, is at a 41% spend. This we have a little bit harder number. We do expect probably about 300,000 in savings. The contractual services just, frankly, come under budget in this item. Fiscal services or Easy Pass retail fees, 829, is below budget at 45%, but this is trending back towards budget. We are working through the backlog of the NOTDs, and we continue to do so, and we expect this trend to continue more towards budget as we go forward. Primarily, IT objects of 841 through 869 are at 50%. These are really just the timing of invoices. We expect to be on budget on this. We don't see any issues in that. Easy Pass Service Center costs, 873, is at an 8% spend, but we do actually anticipate to be over budget on this. And that's pending a modification to the TransCore contract to hire additional customer service representatives and the associated costs with all electronic tolling. For the customer service reps, this is, an initiative to reduce call center times. Moving on to supplies and materials, Object 9, we're at a spend at 65% spend, which is under budget. Roadway maintenance, 905, is at 38%. Again, timing and seasonality in this object. Salt, 906, is 56%. We anticipate savings. We're through the winter season now, so we don't expect any further expenses on that. And uniforms is below at 46%. Again, supply chain issues. There's things that have been ordered but delayed, so they haven't hit our budget at this point. The big item in this area is Easy Pass transponders, 951. It's at 74%, which is actually on budget, but we do expect, again, at the end of the year to be above budget. Due to all electronic tolling, we're seeing greater demand for transponders. In addition, we do have a number of 10-year-old transponders out there that are going to need replacement, so we do anticipate this to trend upwards. Replacement equipment, Object 10, is at 41%. The Nice Middleton Bridge Administration Building has been delayed, so we do anticipate some of these funds or underspend would be rolled over into the next year. Additional equipment, Object 11, it's at a 22% spend. Again, this is supply chain issues, delay in orders, things of that nature. Again, if we do come under budget, it's probably being rolled over into the next year to go forward. And finally, fixed objects. This was one object, Object 13, which was over at 93%, and that was driven by one insurance invoice, which was for the excess property liability costs. It came in, well over budget, but there's been a lot of volatility in that market, so not surprising, but that's what's driving that overspend. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Have any questions?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
You started off with your presentation with we would target spending of 73%. We hear that every year on this time. I mean, it's never anywhere near it. Has anyone ever thought about trying to do a seasonally adjusted target spending? Because each item has its own, way, and you guys know it, but we don't know it. We all say, oh, gee, we're doing great. We only spent 52% out of 73. It's not really a reflection of how well we did or not.
I agree 100%. I can't speak to history. I do know in other lives, in budgeting, I've been used to seasonally, it's called seasonalization of budgets, which for that very reason, because it becomes a more difficult comparison when you don't do that. So,
especially for someone who's not watching it every day like you all are. You probably got it in your head, but we don't.
Yeah.
And another complaint I have is that we have burden in there, 55 million, and why isn't that offset from each of the? You have 5 or 6 or 7 items that you're drawing it from, I guess. So security,
Break the burden,
leave, all
break the
this
burden
stuff.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you budget it, you have it broken down budgeting, but yet there's nothing going in there. We spent, what was it, 151, Social Security, we spent 0.65%,
Right. Well, I mean, we could take the burden expense. It makes it a little more challenging because you're trying to monitor, are you over or under apply? So for, in that, for those accounts, we look at them where we net them. What was the budget? What have we charged from a burden perspective to assess if we're over or under? And, so to what we'd have to do is just allocate them out. Take that number and set up a formula so that X percentage goes into each one of these buckets. That would be the outcome. It wouldn't be, what do we actually spend on Social Security? What do we actually spend on each one of these line items? We could only do it through an allocation. Mm-hmm. And that's the whole reason why we use the burden expense to begin with.
So you're not paying premiums to some of these things, they're just expenses. We're self-funding, is that what you're saying?
No.
Health insurance,
Well, the state,
Social Security,
the,
retirement.
what I'm saying is that the reason that we have to utilize a burden account is it actually comes back to the capital program, because when since we have more than one budget, when someone, how they spend their work week makes a difference in charging different budgets. And particularly if someone's working over 40 hours, that we can't say, well, these 8 hours over 40, they're all capital. We have to take the salaries, and if someone is paid overtime, and all the benefits, whether it's pension, vacation, it really doesn't matter, and allocate them over the 2 budgets. And that's the whole reason we have the burden. And then we account for it almost like a company with overhead. You have all your overhead expenses go into an overhead bucket, and then you allocate it out. And that's what we're doing with the burden expenses. We're doing the exact same thing. And so we've always looked at it as just knowing you take the sum of the budgets, because we do budget by line item, because that's what DBM requires.
Right.
And then we offset it against the burden to figure out, are we over or under applied, and then we make adjustments if needed throughout the year.
Well, are you over or under?
We are under applied. So in other words, we need to increase the burden rate and charge the RCs more.
Okay.
But you're talking about seasonality, there's a piece of that there as well. So yeah, we do need to make an adjustment, and that's when I look at our underspending for payroll. I do offset that with knowing how much we're under from the burden perspective.
Okay.
But completely agree with your statement about creating some seasonality, and we can group the different accounts or line items into probably 5 different buckets. Some of them are pretty straight line, salaries is an example of them. But other normally Easy Pass would be very straight line. A little bit of blimp because we have higher traffic in the summer, but not enough to move the needle enough from expenses. But we can create that as a project for
Intern. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I have a question for the Easy Pass. So we're very below, and so we paid 3.4 million. We budgeted 45. So TransCore hasn't.
Billed us.
They haven't billed us for that.
That's right. That operating, we'll owe operating expenses from roughly the end of July. And don't hold me the number, because there's maybe some in transit. We paid roughly $6-7 million in O&M's expenses. We paid for some Easy Pass accounts. We paid for DMV lookups, pass through, and that is it. Met with them about 3 weeks ago, working on documentation for their invoices, for postage, everything else. We talk about it, but we have not been billed yet. And some of that comes from their CEO, that he wants to finish delivering, system acceptance. They're standing by their word to deliver the system, and not ready to bill for all of that operating.
I think it's important too to note that part of the reason for not invoicing yet is that we have been spending the last several months negotiating the modification that would define how the phasing has been adjusted. So the invoices that we're talking about are for their phase 4 operations and maintenance phase, what's defined as phase 4 in the contract. That has been clarified through the mod, which is now executed by TransCore, and that we anticipate bringing to the board next month. So that sort of clears the path for them to be able to invoice us. We've defined the exact circumstances on which we would approve invoices, essentially.
Makes sense.
So we'll be clear when this is all hashed out. I'm shocked that they didn't win. That's a lot of money to be carrying, but we'll be clear which expenses we're going to incur going forward, and be able to isolate the monies that we're incurring for the customer assistance plan and these one-time events.
The modification does provide that breakdown for each of the vendors on which part is towards the customer assistance plan, which part is attributable to the transition to AET, because again, on the CAP side, where they had contemplated installing certain equipment for cash collection, that didn't happen, and we switched to their needing increased quantity for processing of a higher image-based toll. If you think about it, meaning before, when you have cash collection, only maybe less than 5% of our transactions would be an image-based toll, a video toll. Now that roughly 15% of that cash collection is a video-based toll, we have to increase the quantity of image-based transactions in the contract. So there's direct AET impacts, there's direct backlog impacts where certain transactions could have been previously, had we not had a backlog, they could have been processed under the prior contract. Now they're being moved into the newer contracts by the deferring. And then there's the customer assistance plan. So all of those are in there. The board has asked a number of times about costs related to the transition delay, which is a separate issue. Generally, those costs are not, as we've sort of talked about here with what TransCore and their CEO has done, those costs have not been passed to us. As Joe will mention today, the modifications reflect a non-compensable time extension, where at transition delay costs, we did have some costs for our consultants, which we've talked about, where they had to do retesting and things like that. But the transition cost from delay time, we're not going to incur any expenses for that, and the mods reflect that.
And also the increased number of people in our customer service center. And I imagine at some point we're not going to need the volume that we increased to because of all the.
That's correct. So the modification as drafted, it reflects that they are increasing their call center staff to support the customer assistance plan. And MDTA, it's more or less a not to exceed amount, so that MDTA has the flexibility to draw down the number of people. And there were already within the contract agreed upon rates to be able to add staff in the call center up front. So we just essentially have the locked in dollar amounts for adding people, plus we've increased the quantities so that we can do that in a not to exceed fashion. So we will have a little bit of control over managing the peaks and valleys. Now, we can't say, go away, come back, go away, come back. There has to be a fair, good faith effort between us to keep the staff volume reasonable. But we do expect after the customer assistance plan ends, there will be a little bit of a period after that where civil penalties resume, that there may be customers who are confused about why they don't still have their civil penalties waived. So we will have that staff at a higher level at the end of the program to kind of manage those additional questions about the customer assistance plan, and then we'll draw it down from there. So that is incorporated into the modification.
Thank you.
Great. Any further questions? I do have one, I guess. I know that we have the statewide fuel purchasing contract, but, as we've all noticed, every time we stick the pump in the car, things are really ramping up. So I'm sure that's a challenge for you figuring out what it's going to be for the next several months. How are we forecasting that? Just
For like the additional fuel?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think for this year, you won't see as much an impact when I'm looking at the numbers on a month-to-month basis.
Right.
Yeah, I actually see the last couple months
Yeah.
a bit of a jump. So I think for this fiscal year, you won't see a huge impact. It shouldn't be, it just won't be a huge impact.
Right.
But it'll be incorporated with the, I think, updated budget, because
Sure.
you'll see those fuels. So yes, in terms of tracking, I am seeing that going up, and we'll have to account for that going forward. It'll be an impact.
some sort of balance on
Yeah.
the 23 budget.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right.
You got the fiscal years. Okay, great, thanks. All right, thank you both. Next up, Jeannie Marriott, item number 8, third quarter capital budget comparison, actuals versus projected for FY '22. Jeannie, come on down.
Good morning. I am Jeannie Marriott, the Capital Program Manager, and I'm here to provide an update on the status of actual fiscal year 22 spending against the fiscal year 22 capital budget in the fiscal year 22 through 27 draft CTP. And this information was presented to the Finance Committee on May 10th. As of March 31st, 51% of the fiscal year 22 budget was spent as compared to the targeted spending level of 75%. The total budget for fiscal year 22 is $602.9 million, and the actual spending through the third quarter was $307.4 million. 28 of the 95 projects budgeted in fiscal year 22 were within the acceptable spending limits of 50 to 100%, which is plus or minus 25% of the 75% target. Due to normal lags in invoicing, generally 2 months, a plus or minus 25% threshold was determined to be reasonable. There are 8 projects budgeted for more than $10 million each in fiscal year 22, and we can see details on those on attachment A. The project with the highest budget for fiscal year 22 is, of course, replacing the Nice Milton Bridge, and that's at $227.7 million. Through the third quarter, $132.5 million was spent, which is a spend rate through the third quarter of 58%. So the overall spend rate for these 8 projects is 51%. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, question. Who determined that it's reasonable to be within 50%, 50 and 100%? That's pretty wide range. It was determined. Nobody claims that, do they?
No, I do.
You do? You think
I
that's
do.
reasonable?
No,
I don't.
No, I don't. So I think it talks about like aligning with our reality. And
Uh-huh.
on the capital budget, you know, we talk about seconding a transport, not invoicing, right?
Right.
We nag at times for invoices to come in. And so there can be such a delay with contractor and A&E firms' invoices coming in, and you see that in June. I mean, we'll process more payments in June than we will have
They
processed
don't need the money, huh?
5 months prior to that. And that's the reason. I mean,
sounded,
to
yeah.
have that big of a swing
Yeah.
is we know there's that much of a delay in invoices coming in. That's the reason for it.
Uh-huh. What happens with the bills who that didn't come in the prior year? Do they get counted in here, or?
Well, they all come in by the end of the year.
Oh, they do? So you
Yes.
catch it up at the end of June?
Yeah, they know, and I mean, it's
There's an accrual process
Yeah.
where, as you're getting toward the end of fiscal year, finance will send out a notice to all of the teams saying, let us know what you anticipate that will be accrued by the vendors. And so you have to work with the vendors to try to estimate how much are you going to invoice us that will have expenses related to this fiscal year. And then working with finance, the invoices may lag, but you have that estimate to be able to apply the invoice back for the work that they perform. So that accrual process allows us to manage the fact that
Right,
you don't
you're
have
accruing.
all the invoices in at one time. Although we do have that big push, as Deb said.
yeah, and so we keep a chunk of July, half of July open, where we'll post invoices to June. And so when firms have to prepare that estimate, you know, for our accrual, it's just as easy for them just to get their invoices caught up. So usually what happens is we have this huge inflow of invoices coming in through May, and then the accrual ends up only being the June work. It is normally what happens. But it's, you know,
I got- I have a question on a specific one, like the Nice Middleton Bridge. So through March, we've spent 58%. Now, when are we gonna finish that bridge, Will? They gonna be finished before the governor leaves?
We are saying
That
we're
was the
gonna-
hope.
We are saying that we are going to be open by January of 2023.
Uh-huh.
However,
Next
I
year.
am
Next
confident that we are going to meet that.
Uh-huh, okay. So, I mean, I think they've done more than 58% of the bridge. They've completed
Yeah,
more than
this-
58%.
Oh,
this
this
is-
is just
so they're
for fiscal
lagging
year
too.
22. This
Yeah.
is just for that one, this,
That
For
22
the-
section,
the
I mean,
22.
piece.
And keep in mind that much of invoicing, the way that our vendors are paid, is based on, and contractors, is based on when work items achieve substantial completion. Now, there are certain ways where you can meter out payment on certain line items,
Right.
but much of the line items are, you don't get paid until it's done.
Yeah, complete.
And so you could be out there and be 99% complete for a while, and we're like, well, until you reach substantial completion, you're not getting paid. So it's not uncommon when we see progress reporting from our construction team, they'll say, you know, we are 90% complete, we've used 85% of the time, but we've only spent, you know, 60% to date. You know, because of the way that the invoices lag. And again, part of that is to encourage the way that the items are structured. It's set up to encourage the contractor to finish the work. You don't want a lot of partially complete work. You got to.
So again, you have more underbilling because
Yeah.
of that.
Correct.
Not just not sending bills, not finishing items.
and we do take all that into account when we're setting the budgets, the yearly budgets for the capital projects.
Thank you.
Great.
I think that's really important that Jeannie said is when we're just talking about the operating budget, you know, being more straight lined, that's not the case on the capital side at all. Each project has a
Look at
cash
it.
flow
Right.
curve. And so the budget is built based on each individual's project's cash flow.
Well, so then you would have expected 72% to be billed by now? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You
so-
only got 52%, so we didn't do a very good job
58.
of
So,
projecting.
The way that it works is prior to a contractor's bid, we have over the years developed an S-curve that is aligned with how a normal project
Right.
cash flows. That's our estimate. Once we get into construction, the contractors provide us a cost-loaded CPM schedule that's updated regularly, typically on a monthly basis, depending on the contract language. That cost-loaded CPM then allows us to update the S-curve, and we try to do that a little gradually so that
Yeah.
we don't have an over-under wildly, and we discuss that with the contractor. If our S-curve is really far off from their S-curve, it's probably a warning sign that you're not likely to actually invoice as fast as you think you are. But there is that sort of reliance on assumptions related to schedule, and yes, they don't always invoice as quick as they thought they were. They don't always finish the work in its entirety when they thought they would. But overall, I would not say at all that the Nice Bridge is behind schedule. I don't.
Right.
The other thing that finance has said to OEC is, you cannot overspend the capital budget. We don't have that room. And so when they know that going over a little is not an option, then 100% cannot be their target. They have to target 95 because just as much as they could be a little under, they could be a little over, and we said you cannot be over. So I think that's a piece of it as well, is, and they've committed not to be. There's years that we can certainly absorb, letting things accelerate a little bit. The other thing that it's very challenging, because we compare ourselves to other transportation units all the time, and one of the things with this agency's capital projects, I thought I had heard once, our average construction contract is somewhere around $15 to $20 million is an average for us, right? Whereas others, they can have a ton of $1 and $2 million contracts. And so when you have a large contract with that type of average, just not get awarded by 1 or 2 months or a protest, it really can throw off your dollars, because we don't have a lot of really small contracts that we can push real fast and make up the difference. And that's always just been, I think, made it harder than it is for most in spending the full capital budget because of the average amount of our capital projects, each contract.
Thank you.
Yep. Any more questions? Any further questions? All right, hearing none, we're on to item number 9. Deb will
Thank you, Gene.
be giving us an update on the quarterly update on the traffic and revenue, actual performance of traffic and revenue compared to the forecasted through March of this year.
Thank you. Consistent with what we've been doing in prior months, the first thing is, I'm going to start off with some key takeaways. We have 4 of them. First is revenue revenue's underperforming, and however, this underperformance that we're going to see, towards the end of the year, particularly, it's not impacting us at all with our ability to make our financial coverage, particularly the 2 times debt service coverage. Forward projections, we anticipate underperforming the TNR, and I'll talk about that why in a few minutes. We've also added a CDM Smith report. On the Finance Committee side, we do a quarterly update that includes our independent traffic and revenue consultants provide a quarterly report. We've revamped that report a little bit. We worked with them so that it's very focused on what happened in the past quarter and doesn't restate a lot of what was already in their annual report. And then, so that has been provided in your materials. And one of the things that they particularly track are traffic levels. And traffic levels are nearly back to pre-pandemic levels for passenger cars, and commercial continues to exceed pre-pandemic levels. And the last key point is when we talk about the things that are driving down our revenue right now, they are specific to this year. They're not carrying into future TNR reports. So if like a lot of times things involving Easy Pass, average Easy Pass toll amount, something like that, traffic being lower than forecast. Those things have, not only can they affect you in the current year, but they'll affect your entire 10-year traffic and revenue forecast. So what we're going to talk about, it's really impacting this fiscal year. Okay. So starting off in the summary, this is a table. This is the bottom at page 1. It's consistent with what we've shown you. This is through March 31st, 2022. First is Easy Pass current year and prior year. In other ways, the same backlog. Where are we? And for our current year transactions, we're 12.4 million above the forecast when we make an adjustment of 1.1 million for a timing difference that we expect to occur by the end of the year. If we look at backlog, we're 26.4 million behind, and that, again, that's adjusted for a timing difference. We'll talk about that. That's a big driver of it, and that nets to 14 million. And then when the video, administrative, and pay-by-plate, we're 15 million ahead when we adjust for a $6 million timing difference. So collectively, we're 1.4 million above the forecast on an adjusted basis, or if we don't adjust for these timing differences, we're 8 million behind. Now, if we go just to the top of page 2, that is a pretty significant change from January. So when we were having this exact same conversation in February, when we were talking about January, that adjusted number was $12 million. So at that time, we were 12 million ahead of forecast. And so if all things would hold true, basically everything that happened in the beginning of the year, if they would repeat themselves in the second half of the year, then we would exceed the forecast. Well, the second half of the year is not repeating the first half of the year, and it started to change in mid-February, and that's what has caused us to go from 12 million down to 1.4. This trend will continue, so by the time we are in June, we will be under forecast. Now, you know, and to say, if I would say significantly, you know, that's relative. Like, is, you know, just to one person, you know, $5 million is significant. To somebody else is not until you're like $25 million. But we'll be under a good bit, but in no means in jeopardy of violating any of our coverage, any of our financial policies. Okay, so why? What has changed? So the first paragraph that you see, where it starts off key contributors, this is explaining what happened from January to March. So first we have these factors that are pulling us down. And the first one is the overstatement of the forecast. If you remember a couple months ago, we talked about some numbers that were counted twice. In total, that's going to be about $38 million of overcounting in the forecast by the time we get to June. So during this time period, it was 6.7 million. The next one is the average video toll rate is lower than forecasted. That sums $4 million. And what that has to do with is in the forecast, the assumption was the video toll rate would increase over time, because if you recall, we had the temporary time period where we charged the cash rate. Right, so that's a lower video toll rate. The NOTDs that have been mailed during this time period those overweighted more current transactions and therefore drove the average down. So that's $4 million. And then $1 million with pay-by-plate being lower than what was forecasted. Additionally, staff removed $3.4 million of things we were calling timing differences. It was a conservative measure. They may materialize by the end of the year, but that confidence level isn't as high as it was, and we erred on the side to be conservative, and therefore we backed it out. Now, there are a couple things that offset those things that were pulling it down. One is the average Easy Pass rate. It's higher than what was forecasted. That's good news this year. That's good news for future years. The next one is that our video toll collection rate is higher than what was forecasted. You sum them together for this 2-month period, that equates to $4.3 million. And then also civil penalties was $2.1 million higher than forecasted. Okay. So then we go into, well, why are you saying that we're going to continue on this trend that we're going to end up being under our forecast? And the first one is that through January, that higher Easy Pass and video toll rates and the collection rate and the civil penalties, they were all overperforming enough that they could offset these other factors, including the overstatement of the forecast. But now, we've got the Easy Pass that's continuing to overachieve. But beginning in February, the average video toll rate went down. We've stopped civil penalties, so there's not going to be civil penalties revenue. And on top of that, we had forecasted some civil penalty revenue during this later part of the year that will not occur. So it's those types of actions that's causing us to shift down. We also have certain video toll and Easy Pass. Interagency group is what we call them. They're the non-Maryland account holder transactions. They may very well shift into next fiscal year. It is, when we're outside of a 60-day window is what we call it, it's a lot more work to process those transactions, and it takes a lot more coordination with our partner agencies, and that takes time, and that's what we're experiencing here.
Deb, maybe I'm getting ahead of you, but as far since our actions as far as civil penalties and given until November to clear that up, how is the revenue coming as far as catch up from, is that starting to, are you going to be getting to that?
In 1 second.
Okay. No
in just 1 second. And during Finance Committee, I was asked, how much are we going to be under our forecast? There's so many variables going different directions. Even right now, and look at it, it's May 20th. You'd think we're 6 weeks from the end of the fiscal year. How do you not know that? We are behind on some processing of current transactions. There was an additional control that we put in the system, and it slowed down some processing. And so we've removed that. And what we did is, whenever you have controls to make sure everything's accurate and correct, if you could have it exactly how you want it, you want those controls to prevent something from ever happening. So we call them preventative controls. If you can't have a preventative control, then you end up with a compensating control. And that's so you can detect it and then take action. So we went from a compensating control to a preventative control, and it just slowed things down too much. So we had to remove that. We're back to our compensating control. We're going to refine that preventative control and do it again. And that's just part of our continuing improvement. So between that and mailings, and we just have a lot of variables but, you know, we're likely, I'm going to be very surprised if we're not every bit of $25 million under our forecast. If we look at our forecast, and if you ask the question, well, how much could our revenue decline, and we'd still make our coverage? And that number is a staggering nearly $300 million. So that's what I mean by, like, we are nowhere in the vicinity of not meeting our coverage. And that's because look at all the revenue that shifted from 21 into 22. Right? We covered 21 within all of our policies. That revenue materialized in 22, and that is the driver as to why there's just not even a chance that we would not make our coverage.
I just want to add one point to what Deb said, because I think it's helpful to understand when we talk about the difference in controls. We also have a lot of redundant controls where we have two separate vendors for lane side and back office. Each one of them have control mechanisms in place. So I didn't want anybody's takeaway to be that we're just reactionary and not finding things. That's not the case. Our controls are redundant between the two to really provide a belts and suspenders to really try to make sure we get everything.
Right. And our shifting, the improvement piece is moving from, and if there was an issue, it's detected, to moving to have controls that it's just prevented. It's not even plausible. That's our transition now with these redundancies. To answer Member Cox's question about the customer assistance plan, you can find this at the bottom of page 2. These numbers are as of April 30th because that's the numbers I had when we mailed out a few weeks ago your materials. We waived $17.4 million in civil penalties. That's roughly 108,000 customers, and we've collected $10 million in outstanding video tolls associated with those civil penalties. Okay. So then, so then next on page 3, forecast and actual performance. All that is talking about is that you have a couple attachments in your materials. It certainly can answer questions of it. Your attachment 1 is where we go through and we break down the unadjusted amount and, what are timing differences and just that analysis. It's greater detail for the table that we looked at. Attachment B is answering the question, well, what makes up this underperformance or overperformance, depending on which line item it is. And then attachment C and D is presenting our actual revenue compared to budget forecast in 2 ways. One is looking at it by payment method, and the other is by facility. I'm sorry, the labels are reversed. That's my fault on this. So the attachment D is actually by facility, even though it's labeled payment method, and attachment C is by payment method. And then attachment D, that is the CDM Smith report that I mentioned in the beginning. And on the bottom part of page 3, you can see a little bit of an analysis of that. And, the takeaway is where are we with our traffic? And it's, getting back to pre-pandemic levels is the takeaway from that analysis. The dollars and all, they reconcile exactly with ours. We work closely with CDM Smith. We share information with each other. Just the mindset, the more we share with them, they share with us, the better long-term TNR forecasts that we have. And that's our goal. With that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deb. Any questions on that one? Okay. Hearing none, we're going to move to item number 10. Jeannie is back with us. Update on the Consolidated Transportation Program process and additions. Take it away.
Okay. I'm going to provide the board with an overview of the CTP process and an update on the additions to the capital program. And this information was presented to the Capital Committee on May 5th. Every year, the Maryland Department of Transportation issues the Consolidated Transportation Program, otherwise known as the CTP, report, which is Maryland's 6-year capital budget for transportation projects. The MDTA portion of the CTP presents ongoing and new capital projects for a 6-year period for the MDTA facilities. The CTP is updated twice a year. After approval by the board members in June, the draft CTP is presented as part of the MDOT CTP tour. During the CTP tour from September 15th to November 15th, the Secretary of Transportation visits each of the counties and Baltimore City to present the draft CTP. These meetings provide the local legislators and the public an opportunity to communicate their priorities and concerns in person. And also present at the meetings to answer more detailed questions are representatives, God bless you, are representatives from each of the MDOT business units. The draft CTP is revised and submitted after MDTA board approval in November as the final CTP. The final CTP is included in the governor's budget to the Maryland General Assembly in January, and this process is required by statute and applies to MDTA as well as the other MDOT business units. And the CTP is divided into 3 parts: the construction program, major projects, development and evaluation program, major projects, and the system preservation, minor projects. The construction program, major projects program includes ongoing projects and those projects which are scheduled to begin construction within the 6-year period. Only those projects that the MDTA can afford to complete, given the most recent revenue forecast, are included in the CTP. The Maryland Transportation Code requires that the CTP include a report that identifies each major capital project. Specified information about each major project in the development or construction phase is required, including the amount of funds requested for the 6-year period, the total estimated cost of the project, an explanation of significant changes in cost, scope, design, or schedule, and a purpose and need summary statement that includes a general description, why the project is necessary, how it satisfies state goals, and the location. Now, all of this information is provided in a project information form, which we refer to as a PIF, for each major capital project. The PIFs are included in the published draft and final CTPs. And if we look at attachment A and B, we can see 2 PIFs from the fiscal year 22 to 27 final CTP. The first one is for the Express Toll Lanes Northern Extension Project, and it shows where the project's located, and of course a name, designation that it's part of our primary construction program. There's a description, the purpose and need summary statement that explains that traffic forecast showed us that it was a good idea to move ahead with this project. This particular project is in the middle of construction, so there's no significant changes from the older CTP. And you can see in this box on the bottom how much money is budgeted for each phase of the project and how much has been spent and what the 6-year total is for this project. And then, of course, this one, because it goes beyond 2028, is there is a balance to complete. And then I also included the second PIF because I wanted to show you what it looks like with a project that's almost finished. You'll see that the current year $50,000 budget is the last year that this project is budgeted, and that there was a change from the prior CTP where the cost decreased by $2.9 million due to less than anticipated costs for structural steel, testing, maintenance of traffic, and the miscellaneous allowance item. And so this project's actually open to service, but we're finishing up work that doesn't interfere with traffic, and also it takes some time to complete the payments after the project's finished. And then back to the memo. Funding availability is based on the MDTA's 6-year financial forecast, which considers estimates of traffic and revenue, the operating budget and capital budget, debt service payments, the potential need for future bond sales and toll increases, and compliance with financial standards. And we have new projects that originate from 5 sources: long-range capital needs, inspection findings, regulatory compliance, increased capacity needs, and local priority letters and legislative requests. In the fiscal year 23 to 28 draft CTP, which I will be presenting to you in June for approval, includes 3 new projects. The first one is the northbound overheight vehicle detection system improvements for the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel. That one is currently funded for engineering only at $47.9 thousand. This project will deploy enhancements to the overheight vehicle detection system, and the project is starting with an assessment of the existing operations and investigation of the available technologies and operational schemes to improve the detection and notification of overheight vehicles. And the engineering costs for this will increase as time goes along because this funding is requested for the preliminary engineering. The second project is a Fort McHenry Tunnel Box Girder Preservation, and that one is funded for $150,000 for engineering. And this is to preserve the existing steel bridge structures throughout the Fort McHenry Tunnel facility by cleaning, painting, and repairing deteriorated portions of the box girders, especially the supporting girder ends. And on to the last page, which I see now. Here it is. And the third new project is a generator replacement at various facilities. That's a multi-area project that's funded for $240,000 for engineering. And this will replace 4 facility generators that are approaching the end of their life. And they're located at the Bay Bridge Admin Building, the Harbor Tunnel Auto Shop, the Kennedy Highway Substation, and the Hatem Bridge Admin Building. And I do want to point out that not all of the counties have submitted their priority letters. So as MDTA is reviewing these letters, we may come across some other appropriate project additions, and those would be presented at the June meeting.
I know we do. I've seen a few of them come in that are lagging, and some of them like to wait until like the day before a meeting. But with the IIJA money out there, they're really missing an opportunity to tell us what they're looking for. So it's frustrating.
Well, hopefully we've been able to already have in the capital program a lot of projects that they need and want.
Exactly. For some people, there's priority care.
Right.
Any questions? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great, thank you. Next up, item number 11, Joe Trim with the update on the 3rd generation electronic toll collection system. Welcome, sir.
Hello, everyone. Good to be back. Okay. My name is Joe Quattrone, the ETC Program Manager. Just looking at the slide deck on, starting with slide 2, you can see the deck overall is shrinking because as we're further along in the project, and that's a good thing. So hopefully the deck shrinks even more. So as far as the schedule updates, a lot of this has been touched on in this meeting, but the Laneside vendor, CAPSH, they've received their system acceptance test approval, and they're working on punch list items at the moment. The back office vendor, TransCore, has delivered all their software releases. And they've entered a 30-day test, system acceptance test, as of April 25th. They'll finish that up next week, and if we approve the results, they'll move on to their punch list items. And as Will touched on, the negotiations are complete for the contract mod for both vendors. And, he touched on the no-cost time extension, modifying the funds associated with the AET conversion, backlog quantity changes, and the addition of the customer assistance plan. So this has gone through the approval process in MDTA, and will probably hit the BBW, I think it's in early July. Okay, I'm moving on to slide 3. Key focus areas. FMT AET conversion is targeting the early fall 2022 timeframe. And the BHT conversion, that's a few years out, not on our radar quite yet. And then as we move out of system acceptance test, we're standing up all the processes to support the system going forward internally with MDTA, all the tools and processes for our independent validation, our auditing processes, and that's kind of an ongoing exercise. And we're always checking that the data coming from the lane going to the back office is tolling customers correctly. If we find any issues in that area, we prioritize those fixes and we get those in. And then beyond that, we're holding the vendors accountable for KPIs and timely maintenance, making sure that that's occurring on time. Okay, I'm moving on to slide 4. Slide 4, this is risk tracking, post-go live risk tracking. I'm thinking call center, if this trends in this positive direction and over the next month or two, it's no longer a risk. As you can see, since the customer assistance plan was announced in February, our call volumes are way down. Our call wait times this month are 10 seconds of call wait time. Our KPI is 40 seconds, so it's well under the KPI. And we think that trend's going to continue, and it's shown since the program was announced, it went from 7 minutes to 27 seconds to 10 seconds at the average call wait time. And volumes have decreased steadily since then.
I just want to add a point on that when we say it's 9 seconds, 10 seconds, I mean, there is like a routing to a specific customer agent. And so in all practicality, through large portions of the day, there's effectively no wait. You go through the IVR, you reach a person. I've done it myself personally to validate that these numbers are actually real. And lately, anytime I've ever tried it, you blast straight through, essentially no wait at all.
And I'll add to that, Will, I think I told you this, one of my friends had an issue and he called into the EasyPass number and said it was one of his best customer service experiences he's ever had. He's not a young man, so he's done many of these phone calls throughout his life, and he said this was the best one ever.
Excellent.
So that was, and he told me that like unsolicited, so I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that's great. Great to hear.
So keep up that good work.
Thank you. Any more on, like I said, I think that this trends, and there's no reason why it won't continue to trend like this. We won't track it as a risk anymore. We'll still probably report on it, but it's no longer a risk. Moving on to slide 5, the last slide in the deck, just to touch on backlog. The video transactions, we're up to approximately 55 million video transactions that have posted to customer accounts. Actually, this is for both current and backlog video transactions. By posting it to their accounts, it allows them to receive the early payment discount if they choose. To receive that discount, they have to pay online before MDTA incurs the expense of the mailing of the NOTD. As of around May 11th, we're up to 31 million NOTD transactions that have been mailed to customers. And as far as backlog goes, we're overall we're at 99.5% complete from where we started processing the backlog. For ETC transponder backlog, we're at 99.5%. We're up to 95% complete for video backlog. So that leaves approximately around 2 million transactions left, all told, since we started to now. That's a very small percentage when you think about where we started with the backlog. These are transactions that are a little more difficult to handle because they're there for a reason. There was an issue with them, so an error of some sort. So just analyzing those errors and getting them sent through, corrected and sent through, takes time. So that.
If I could just add one point to Joe on the backlog, we want to make sure we're clear and always say this, that there's the date that the transaction posts for video backlog, when it posts, when it gets mailed, and then a citation that's developed after that. So, in terms of have we provided enough duration from our customer assistance plan that ends in November, we've been saying that this backlog is going to clear out in the summer. And so the numbers that Joe is reporting is when things are posted. And so customers from that posting date, they can get that 15% discount, have months and months before that final cutoff for a civil penalty would be waived. So I just want to give the board confidence that our timing in relation to the backlog processing, when the posting is going to end, and how much time a customer has to pay that outstanding toll before they would reach the end of the customer assistance plan, all of the assumptions that we made are working out, and we think that customers should have plenty of time to resolve their outstanding tolls.
Can I ask a question on that? So obviously our call volumes are down. So we have more folks in there, which we talked about earlier.
Yep.
Our call volumes are down, but they're down because they sort of got the deadline got pushed out. That's essentially, is that probably the biggest reason why the call volume's down?
Well,
are we going to be in trouble in November?
I think there's multiple reasons that the call volumes are down. So we have call volumes and you have case management. And case management is things like we have our contact us and email address where somebody can reach out through a different channel. Right now, we're getting to where, by the end of this month, we expect that we'll be running real time, where if you reach out to us by email, within a couple days, you're getting a response. Before, it was you could email us, and months later, you still haven't gotten a response because there was such a backlog. So there's things that previously you'd do an email, then you'd reach out by contact us, you try a web chat, then you call. People are dinging us multiple times. So the volume, a lot of the drop is the same person not calling 3 and 4 times to resolve the same issue. So that's part of it. But yeah, there's certainly, we see it in the tracking of what is happening on social media, where there are individuals who are saying, well, I'm going to wait until this is all said and done and see what I have left and take care of it then. We do not advise that. I mean, the customer assistance plan was designed to provide a grace period where customers can make payments over time. So if they have minimal toll debt, waiting till the end really may not be an issue, but somebody who's accrued a number of tolls, this program is designed to allow them to make payments over time, not to wait till the end and see what happens. That's a risk for that customer that, certainly none of our communications in any way have encouraged that.
So I'm done. I'm done with my presentation.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions?
Thank you, guys.
Great. Mr. Hines, I believe that you are next on our agenda for the executive director's report.
Yes, well, good morning again, board members. This month I'd like to start my report highlighting some of our significant environmental achievements. MDTA's Carson Run Stream Restoration Project won the MDOT Environmental Excellence Award for environmental quality in 2022. And I want to congratulate MDTA's Office of Engineering and Construction for this award. These awards recognize notable achievements in environmental compliance and sustainability practices that are across our MDOT TBUs. A panel of judges scored the nominations based on a number of different criteria and selected the winner in these three categories based on environmental quality, sustainability, and the environmental hero. And the Carson's Run Stream Restoration Project won that environmental quality award based on MDTA's commitment to environmental stewardship. The project provided mitigation credit and created wetlands to help meet the compensatory mitigation requirements due to unavoidable impacts associated with the I-95 ETL northbound extension project that we have ongoing. The stream restoration included replacing a concrete channel lining and a natural stone structure to create a more sustainable system and that improved habitat features. The project also included tributary restoration to reduce erosion, reconnected the stream to a floodplain, created wetlands, enhanced the stream buffer with robust native plants, and improved wildlife habitat. So really a lot of things done in that mitigation effort. We also protected existing mature trees during the construction, and the project was delivered ahead of schedule and under budget. I also want to take the time to recognize the MDTA's 2021 facility recycling winners. Each year, the MDTA holds 2 recycling contests for our facilities with the highest overall recycling rate and facility with the biggest increase in the recycling rate for the prior year, each receiving a respective award. For calendar year 2021, the MDTA facility with the highest overall recycling rate was our John F. Kennedy Highway Maintenance 1 facility. Maintenance 1 recycling rate was at 34.2%. This is JFK 1's first time winning the overall highest rate. Since the MDTA began tracking the northern region recycling rates by individual facilities in 2010, JFK 1 has maintained a recycling rate greater than 20% nearly every year. The MDTA facility with the highest overall increase in its recycling rate for calendar year 2021 is the ICC. ICC recycling rate in 2020 was 21.52%, and in 2021 that increased to 27%, which is a 20% increase over the prior year. The last time the ICC won this category in 2015, the ICC came online in 2011, and since 2013 this facility has maintained recycling rates above 20% annually. Individual employees at JFK1 and ICC will receive a token of thanks for helping their facility achieve these wins. And honorable mentions are FMT, JFK2, and Bay Bridge facilities for achieving recycling rates of more than 20 and 21% in 2021. These facilities achieve recycling rates more than 20% since 2019 and 2018 respectively. Overall, MDTA's recycling rate for 2021 was 21.7%, and I just want to thank all of the employees throughout our agency who participated in and promote the MDTA's recycling program. Now I want to share, totally changing gears on our types of successes, want to share with the board some of the successes that we've had with our CDL program within our operations team. A new regulation was established on February 7th, 2022. The entry-level driver training regulation that sets the minimum federal requirements for training for entry-level drivers and what they must complete before being permitted to take that CDL skills and knowledge test was changed by that regulation. The same regulation, though, however, did provide a path for us to directly become our own certified trainer. And MDOT MVA approved for the MDTA to self-perform our trainings, and the MDTA is registered both with the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration and the Maryland Motor Vehicle Administration system for that training. We have an approved curriculum and a good working relationship with the MVA for scheduling employees for their final testing. We're also working towards the ability to issue provisional licenses. And since launching our CDL training program, our trainers have a 100% pass rate for the 12 employees who have been through the program. 5 of the employees have completely gone through the program and received their CDL licenses, and 7 passed the classroom training and are eligible for their learner's permit, and then will begin their road training. We're also lining up ourselves to train other MDOT TBUs. This will help ensure that we have a regular pipeline of students to maintain classroom sizes and to keep this training viable. We have 2 MOUs currently pending, one with MAA, the Maryland Aviation Authority, and also the Maryland Port Administration. We are well positioned to do this because MDTA has the trainer employees with skills, knowledge, and abilities needed in place. The MDTA anticipates providing training for approximately 10 to 15 employees each for MAA and MPA every year. With so many employees that need CDLs as a condition of their employment with the MDTA, we are also streamlining employee onboarding and eliminating what has been a major hurdle for some employees to progress in their progressions in their career. We're now actively managing the learner's permit process to eliminate wait times for our employees, and we anticipate this program will reduce our costs for external CDL trainings. I want to talk about now, in the past 2 years, we've spoken a great deal about our transition to highway speed all electronic tolling and the benefits of it, and how it's eased congestion, provided less idling, and reduced vehicle emissions, and increased driver safety. The MDTA Police and our Office of Engineering and Construction have reviewed the accident data that we have available, and specifically for our facilities that have fully converted for some time now. Our engineering team, led by Jim Harkness, our chief engineer, analyzed the data, and based on our preliminary findings, we're seeing significant safety benefits from that highway speed AAT at our facilities. And I wanted to share some of the specific stats with the board because I found them pretty compelling. Based on our early tracking of crash data, we've seen an estimated 97% decrease in incidents at the Key Bridge and an 85% reduction at the Bay Bridge. And when I talk about those numbers, we're not talking a reduction of 2 incidents down to 1. We're talking about dozens and dozens of incidents that are effectively 0 at some locations. We expected operational improvements and reduction in incidents with highway speed AAT, but the numbers are really promising, so we wanted to share this information with you, and we'll continue to track it for all of the facilities as they get out of like a work zone environment and fully transition to that full AAT. We'll continue to track this data, but the early results are showing phenomenal improvements for our customer safety and traffic operations from the elimination of stop-and-go traffic at our toll plazas. This is wonderful news for improved safety for our customers, but also for our employees, where some of the prior incidents in the toll plaza actually involve worker injuries to our prior cash toll collectors. Now I want to talk about Governor Hogan proclaimed on May 4th as State Employee Appreciation Day. Every year, Governor Hogan recognizes state employees with that proclamation, and this year, Governor Hogan proclaimed that May 4th date as the Recognition Day. This day highlights the dedication, hard work, commitment, and professionalism of our state employees, and the day each agency has the opportunity to honor the exceptional and outstanding work that our state employees do and that make a difference for Marylanders. Here at Point Breeze, we held a gathering in our lobby in the morning where employees could grab a complimentary snack and enter to win a paid lunch with me.
Wow.
We had really good turnout at the event. I'm not going to tell where I've committed to take the employee, but it's more than a hot dog. We had a good turnout, and the winner of the drawing was, I'm announcing here, was Lori Osborne, who works at our JFK facility. We're currently scheduling the lunch with her and want to thank all of the participants in this contest. I also had the opportunity that day to visit members of our team at each of the FSK campus buildings to hand out complimentary snacks and to thank them personally for their incredible work that they're doing here at the MDTA. 2 days later, after that event, we had our MDTA police held the Fallen Heroes ceremony. Since 1986, Marylanders have recognized the first Friday in May as Fallen Heroes Day, a day to honor and remember the Marylanders public safety community who lost their lives in the line of duty. This ceremony was streamed on Facebook Live, and I was honored to attend this phenomenal event along with members Enzer and Gangemi, and along with former officers and family members of our fallen heroes. If you would like to see a recording of the event, we did share this on May 6th on the MDTA Police Facebook page, and you can watch the full event there. And finally, just this past Tuesday on May 19th, we held an agency-wide virtual town hall using Teams Live. In addition to myself, all of the MDTA chiefs participated and shared updates on a variety of projects and current matters related to our agency. And I want to thank our talented chiefs and the entire production team for assisting in the event, and particularly for Mary O'Keefe and Sarah Clifford for doing the really heavy lifting and organizing the event. Employees had the opportunity to submit their questions in advance, as well as ask them live during the town hall. This also provided a video with how employees can stay connected and fully leverage our intranet information to stay informed. For those employees who were unable to attend, a recording of the town hall, along with written responses to all of their questions, and that staying connected video will be provided on the intranet for employees to have access to it whenever it's convenient for them. During the town hall, we provided a reminder that on July 14th, we will have a planned rodeo training and awards day. I want to welcome any of the board members who'd like to come to that event to show appreciation to our employees and to have a number of training activities to attend. During this event, we'll also provide another opportunity for employees to directly engage with our chiefs and me about issues important to them. I also want to thank Joey Sagal, our Chief Operating Officer, for his leadership in personally visiting a number of the facility locations recently. I keep hearing from employees how they're seeing him out everywhere. And since starting with MDTA, he's been burning the midnight oil, tackling both the necessary production activities and taking the time to develop relationships with our team, which everybody asks for. Additionally, Colonel Anderson and I are scheduling time for us to visit a number of his officers directly, and Joey and I will continue scheduling in-person meetings at our facilities to directly interact with our team. Finally, I've been providing regular update emails to all MDTA employees on major initiatives and updates throughout the MDTA. This is to supplement our existing updates on our website and through our connections. We'll continue to focus on and work really hard to provide great internal communications with our workforce, including with future town halls like the one that we just completed. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might
your
have.
chief of staff is holding her hand up.
Yeah, and she's correcting me. I must have mispronounced the winner's name. It's actually Lisa Osborne.
Okay.
I'm not sure what I said, but for the record, it's Lisa Osborne.
Lisa, you're the
Sorry.
big winner. That's why you have Mary here.
It is.
Mary, now the whole crew. So.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Definitely
Will.
Keeps my head on straight.
Thank you. Before we do a motion to adjourn, I'm going to exercise a chairman's prerogative here. One, for those of you who don't know, you saw the trucker convoy that occurred a couple months ago. MDTA police, along with the operations staff, were keenly involved, highly involved in that operation, and now there's another one that's ramping up. So kudos to Colonel Anderson and Joey, the Chief Operating Officer's team. We rolled out the plan that we did last time. Hopefully, we won't need to use it. All we got was, yep, we'll do what we have to do, get everything going. They're already forward deploying where they need to be. It's like one big operation. They interact with all the local police officers, the state police. We kind of take the lead from that. But I know Joey and Colonel Anderson, thank you. I know you all are ready to flip the switch when necessary. So that's a big help. And then Colonel Anderson's team continues to be involved with activities in Ocean City and the things to support some of those events over there and working their way back. And of course, the summer travel that's coming up, they're going to be very, very busy as things ramp up over the next couple of days. And then I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that we just completed National Police Week, which honors fallen police officers, and we do honor them and those that gave the last true measure. So just to acknowledge, I believe it ended on Wednesday. It goes. It's a weird time. It goes from like a Tuesday to a following Wednesday or something like that. So it cuts off in the middle of the week. So wanted to acknowledge that. But thank you all, and thanks for the team for everything. So hearing that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Have a motion and a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All right. All those in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The meeting is now closed. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.